A child described a place I had already seen in a police report, and that made no sense at all. But there's one detail I haven't told yet. My name is Daniel. In 1978, I was 27 years old and working as an administrative assistant for the county, helping organize old records, incident reports, forgotten files, that kind of thing. I was sent to an isolated holler in the mountains of Southwest Virginia, Appalachia, because the local clinic was overwhelmed and needed someone to catalog medical files and pass information along to the sheriff's office. I didn't believe in anything supernatural. To me, everything had an explanation. I just had to organize the paperwork and leave. The place felt frozen in time. Damp spring, light rain almost every late afternoon, the constant sound of insects and water running somewhere far off, deep in the dark woods. Inside the clinic, the smell never changed, weak disinfectant mixed with old mold. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting a sickly glow over beige walls. Children came in with fevers. Adults rarely did. Some stopped coming altogether. The first sign was a girl about 8 years old, high fever, glassy eyes. While the nurse tried to bring her temperature down, the girl started talking to herself. She said she had gone to the wrong trees. That's exactly how she put it. Trees that grew twisted, branches bending inward like they were looking at each other. I wrote it down as delirium. Fevers do that. 2 days later, another boy, same age, same fever, same time of night. He described the same place, word for word, the wrong trees, the ground sinking in the middle, and a symbol, something that wasn't a drawing or a letter, a kind of warped natural mark, as if the forest itself had tried to make a sign and gotten it wrong. The second time, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I started noticing something outside the clinic. Every time this happened, a piece of fabric would appear caught on a tree near the dirt trail, a small scrap, children's clothing, always on the same branch, always damp, always torn, never cut. I took one and kept it. It became my reference point, my object. I needed to know where it was coming from. I asked the oldest nurse about it. She stayed quiet for too long. Then she said it had happened before, that it wasn't an illness, that some children could see when their bodies got weak enough, and that adults who went looking didn't come back. She asked me not to interfere. The sound of rain hitting the roof grew louder at that moment, or maybe I just finally noticed it. I found an old sheriff's report from more than 10 years earlier, a group disappearance, 3 men, no bodies, no real investigation, just a strange note at the end. Area marked, case closed. It didn't say which area, but there was a symbol scribbled in the margin, the same one the children described. An older local man, after drinking too much, told me he knew where it was. He looked me straight in the eye and told me to stay away. Said some things were dealt with out there. No court, no paperwork, justice off the books. That night, I dreamed of trees bending inward. I did something I never should have done. I followed the trail alone. After hours in the woods, I saw the symbol. Not drawn, burned. The tree was marked as if fire had chosen that shape, an impossible sign. When I saw it scorched into the wood, I understood someone had been there before me, and not to observe. The ground sunk in at the center. The air was colder, no insects, no birds, just the smell of old burned wood. I found remains, boots, a watch, no bodies. Someone had cleaned everything up, not to hide a crime, to seal a problem. I came back and said nothing. Days later, I heard the man who warned me had left town, like others before him. Whoever was responsible wasn't protecting the innocent. He was eliminating the guilty, or whoever he decided was guilty. The evil wasn't judged, it was silenced. I asked for a transfer. I never went back, but I learned the final rule. If feverish children describe the same place, don't go looking. And if you find a burned symbol in the forest, leave before someone decides you know too much. Years later, the symbol appeared again, closer to the road.
The crime made no sense until I crossed two last names, and that changes everything. But there's one detail I still haven't told. My name is Lucas. In 1986, I was 31 years old and worked as an assistant at the county clerk's office in a small town tucked into the mountains of North Carolina in Appalachia. It was a simple job, organizing old records, certificates, books no one looked at anymore. I was there because I needed the job, and because, honestly, nothing ever happened in that town. Until it did. The murder was of an elderly man named Walter Henson, one of the most respected men around, a retired teacher, helped at the church, knew everyone by name. They found his body in an old shed outside town. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a fight. What frightened people was the way it was done. The body had been arranged with excessive care, as if someone had followed a pattern, a ritual. That morning, the church bell rang earlier than usual. The air smelled of wet pine. The mountains were covered by a low fog that never lifted all day. I knew Walter. He'd been to the clerk's office many times, always polite, always asked about the old books. The day after the funeral, I went into the county's historical archive. I needed to separate documents for the police. I pulled out a thick book with a dark leather cover, civil records of the founding families. That's when I noticed it. Several pages had been removed, not torn, carefully pulled out. That book became my object. I started marking everything that was missing. Always old last names, some still common in town, others not anymore. And then I noticed a strange pattern. Every time a name vanished from the public records, someone with that last name died months later. An accident, an illness, or something unexplained. The second case came too fast. A younger man, a distant cousin of Walter's. Officially, a heart attack, but the family said he'd been feeling followed. I heard that in the hallway of the clerk's office, while the light above me flickered, casting a yellowish glow that gave me a headache. The smell of old paper felt stronger that day. I began cross-referencing family trees. It wasn't difficult. The archives were practically unguarded. Anyone could walk in. And that's how I discovered an old connection, a conflict from the early part of the century. Land taken, deaths never judged, a massacre too small to make it into history books, but too big to be forgotten by the people who lost everything. The second time, I understood it wasn't a coincidence. The recent dead were all direct descendants of men tied to that conflict. It didn't matter if they were good or bad now. The past was collecting its debt all the same, and someone was keeping that reckoning alive generation after generation. I asked an older employee if he knew anything. He closed the office door, said some disputes never end, they just change names, and he advised me to stop. He spoke quietly, as if the walls were listening. At that moment, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The sound echoed more than it should have. I did something I never should have done. I wrote down every last name still listed in the book, and the ones that had already disappeared. My own last name was there. That's when I realized digging too deep could put me on the list. Not long after, the sheriff announced that Walter's case was closed due to lack of evidence. That same week, when I returned to the archive, the record book was gone. Not on the shelf, not in storage, not in the inventory. Gone, as if it never existed. But I still had copies, family trees, notes, dates, proof that someone deliberately interfered with public documents. This wasn't legend, It wasn't madness, it was human action, organized, patient. The crime was never solved. No culprit, no trial, just official silence. Years later, another name was crossed out.